Marriage can be hard. It truly, truly can. My name is Kori Yates, and I'm the director here at Planting Roots. And as we talk about marriage and as we encourage each other in marriage, I don't want to skip the part about walking through those difficult seasons. If you are like me, sometimes I look around me and I think, gosh, they must have it all together. They must get along all the time, and they must be going in the same direction and have the same mission, and their life must just be wonderful. And I would submit to you that that is not the case. We all of us have difficult and challenging seasons of marriage. People look at our marriage. I am married to an active duty soldier, and we've been married for 15 years. And people say, oh my goodness, you must have this great marriage and you all must always get along and it must be absolutely fabulous. And I would tell you, I am married to a wonderful man. I love him dearly. It is a great marriage. But it is two imperfect people that God has put together to do life. It does not always go the way that I planned. But the way that you see our marriage today and the way that you see my life today is not necessarily either the way that it has always been. This is my second marriage. I did have a first, also married to a military guy. He was a military guy, and we walked through 6.5 years of very difficult marriage. It was probably the most difficult season of my entire lifetime. And truly, I walked into that marriage expecting God to bless it and for it to be wonderful and for it to be this union of both lives and hearts as we continue to pursue the Lord. And I had dreams and I had ideas, and those things did not necessarily come to fruition. As we walked through those years of marriage, we dealt with his adultery, we dealt with intimidation and hurtful things. I struggled with things like anxiety and fear and hurt and sadness and anger, those things that I knew what I wanted my marriage to be, and it was not that. And I struggled with insecurity of maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe I'm doing something wrong. I don't know what it is, but it wasn't working. And eventually that marriage started to come to an end the day I came home from work, and he had taken all the things that he had wanted and he had left and gone to find one of those women. We eventually divorced. It was not fun and it was not joyful. But I would submit to you that in that season and in that time of my life, God taught me more about himself than he has taught me at any small point of my lifetime. He has truly been my redeemer. He has been my comforter. He has been my hope more times than I would care to count. And through that season, so very much. Truly. And I know that some of you are dealing with those seasons, and some of you are dealing with those marriages. I know. I get it. It is hard and it is difficult, but God has a plan and God has a purpose. And so today I wanted to encourage you with 3 things that the Lord has taught me with in those difficult seasons, in that difficult season in particular. The first of those is finding godly counsel. In the midst of that marriage, when I was struggling with fear and anxiety and sadness and hurt and anger and all of these things, sometimes those emotions started to determine my decisions. They started to determine whether I wanted to stay or whether I wanted to leave. They started to determine my reactions and my responses to the things that my husband was doing. They started to determine decisions I made with friendships and with houses and all of the decisions of married life. And my emotions started to pour over into those and rule those decisions. Emotions are not necessarily bad things, but running my entire life based on those emotions was not going well. And God brought people into my life that gave me godly counsel. They were able to look at our marriage and hear my words and give me an objective perspective. They were able to point me back to Scripture, point me back to Christ, say, have you sought the Lord on this? What is the Lord saying to you about this? The Word says this. So finding that godly counsel that can speak truth into our lives, that can keep us accountable to what God has called us to, that can truly be that stability and pointing us back to Jesus in the way that we need to be. So godly counsel was the first thing. The second thing that the Lord taught me was my personal obedience. In marriage, I get it. It is two of you working together to do what God has called you to do. I get it. But there are certain things that He has called us to as individuals, as wives in this marriage. He has called us to very specific things. And what He was asking of me in those moments and what He has reminded me of is that I am responsible for my obedience. I do not carry the weight and the responsibility of my husband's obedience to the Lord. I don't. I carry the weight of my own. It is, as a Christian, it is my responsibility to be obedient to the Lord the best way that I know how. And that is all that the Lord asks of me. He is not asking me to be accountable for my husband's choices. He is not asking me to be accountable for the actions that he takes. He is not asking me to be accountable for any of that. He's also reminding me that my obedience is not conditional upon what my husband does or what my husband says or how he reacts to something. My obedience is simply to the Lord. So the third thing the Lord taught me is that it is an intentional pursuit. I have to intentionally pursue the Lord. In those circumstances and situations, truly my only stability that I will ever find, the thing that never changes, the thing that is always faithful, is God Himself. Staying faithful in intentional pursuit of the Lord is vital. Spending time in His Word, spending time worshiping with other believers, spending time in prayer with Him, in conversation with the Lord, those are vital components to my health as a Christian. I have to maintain that pursuit of God. I cannot give up on that because truly, at the end of the day, He is the most important thing of all. God Himself is the most important thing of all. So those are things that He has taught me. He has taught me about godly counsel. He has taught me about personal obedience, and He has taught me about intentional pursuit. If you are dealing with a difficult situation, if you are walking through a hard season of marriage, it's okay. It is okay. You are not the only one in that place. There are professional counselors. There are godly people around you that can truly speak life and hope into those places, that can cover you in prayer, that can help you to walk through those seasons. And there's a God of the universe who has a heart to love you. So as we walk through these seasons, I want you to know that you are not alone. That many of us have walked through seasons just like that. All of us have had difficult seasons in our marriages. So if you have wisdom, if you have suggestions, things that have helped you in those seasons of marriage, we would love to hear. But my prayer for you is that God would truly do a work in you even in this season.